What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another Power Rankings. We do these monthly, and it's February 1st, so that means we do the January Power Rankings. Thank you so much to everyone for the support on these Power Ranking videos. They've been some of my highest viewed videos on my channel, highest liked videos. Some nice comments from people who say, very nice comments from people. So, thank you to everyone who supports the videos. And let's get right into this, which there's a few changes this month. A lot of small changes near the middle and near the beginning, but the first team and the last and some of there's two teams that stay the exact same spot. There's one team in the top 8 who makes a big leap. There's one team in the middle who makes a pretty big leap, and there is one team in the final area that I'd say makes a pretty big leap. But to start it off, in the 32nd spot, we have the staying the same Montreal Canadiens. They haven't got 10 wins yet, and Arizona is better than them because they have 10 wins, and they're just tanking at this point for Shane Wright. If they get Shane Wright, I'll be really sad because I want Arizona to get him. Even if Seattle got him, I would be happy with it. But just Montreal, they're unlike Arizona, they're not purposely bad, and they're just bad. There's no other way to put it. And so, yeah, that's how that just looks for Montreal. Nothing new to say about them, just bad. Number 31, dropping 10 spots. Lost 13 in a row. The Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers have just dropped out of it. Like, usually you see them in the playoffs every other year, and now we're just not seeing them even close to the playoffs. They're still quite a bit higher in the standings than I put them. They're probably around this area, but that's the way they played. That's not about where they are. It's about how they've played, and they've played awful. Just awful. And that's why we're moving into the 30th spot. We have a team that dropped one spot. Seattle. Seattle has just not been what Vegas was as an expansion team, and we all knew that when their roster was drafted. Some people I thought they would be third in the division just by the team they drafted, and it's just not at all gone that way. They're pretty bad, and they're just tanking at this point as well. They're going to be sellers at the deadline. Montreal could probably get some good stuff for what they have at the deadline. And the Flyers, who knows what they're going to do, because I don't know what the Flyers do, to be honest. But moving down 4 spots to number 29, a team that's lost 5 in a row coming into this, and that is New Jersey. What can I say? Hughes has come back, he's healthy, and this team's not gotten any better. If anything, they've gotten worse. And it's another team that's just waiting to be rid of this year, and we're just wondering if at all anything is going to start improving for New Jersey, as results have to show. They have had 2 first overall picks in their roster. Blackwood is their goaltender. He was much better last year than he is this year, but there's not really anything proof suggesting that he's going to be their future goaltender going forward. And this team's Dougie Hamilton's probably the only stable thing in this lineup right now. And can't change an entire team, so you got to start with some certain people, whether it's Lindy Ruff and the coaching staff is going to be moving on, or what's going to be going on, because this team should be doing probably better than they are, as well as Seattle, Philadelphia, Montreal. Now, a team that is up 3 spots in number 28 is just because of their worth ethic, and they will do anything they have to win a game. Arizona, second worst team in the league. Well, they're 5th worst on the power rankings. Only reason that they had their last 10 at one point during the month, they were 5-3-2, which is much better than I'm pretty sure anyone expected. People were starting at the beginning of the year to think that they would be able to destroy Washington's record of 8 wins in a season. Here we are, they have 10 wins in the first half of the season. They're looking like a 20-win team, and I think they've gotten better as the time's gone on. And that's really all I have to say. So moving on, up 1 spot from last time, we have Buffalo. Nothing's different about Buffalo. Only reason I moved them up is because these teams have gotten worse. Philadelphia, New Jersey, teams that have gotten worse have been able to take advantage and teams have gotten better, I should say. So although Buffalo, Arizona, they're not winning games, they're still playing better than Philadelphia, Seattle, New Jersey, that's for sure. Now, moving up 4 spots, and in at number 26, we have Ottawa. Again, just like Buffalo, they've struggled to start the season more than anyone else expected. Well, Buffalo and Arizona were expected to struggle. Philadelphia, Montreal, New Jersey, Ottawa, Seattle, they were expected to be better than they are. And Ottawa's just there again because they've played less games and they've won a few of their last couple. And other teams have just gotten worse around them, so that's why they move up. Now, moving up 1 spot from last time, we have the New York Islanders, which, again, another bad team, not even expected to be near the bottom row, let alone be in the bottom row for almost the entire year. I think the entire year, maybe, except for preseason. And they've just not won. They just can't win. They need that. It's wonder what Lou Lamoriello is going to do on this roster. Maybe in free agency, go get people who can score, because this team cannot score. They have the least amount of goals out of any team, I'm pretty sure, with an 89 at league low. I couldn't say low for a second. And they don't let too many pucks into the net, but they let more pucks in than they are producing. And they have more goals they have less goals than Montreal, than Arizona, than Buffalo, than Seattle, Philadelphia, New Jersey, all of these teams. And that if you expect to make the playoffs playing like this, it's not going to happen. You need goals to win games. The people say defense wins championships. You also need offense. Some would say that your best defense is a good offense. And that's how my NHL franchise mode works, but we're not going to talk about that right now because that's not relevant to real life. So moving up 3 spots, again, not that Chicago has played any good. They haven't. Beating Detroit 8-5 was the high point of the last 6-7 games, and 8-5, if you're going to let 5 goals in, you don't deserve to win the game. But then again, Detroit let 8 in, and you definitely don't deserve if you let 8 in. But Florida scores 8 every night, but they're Florida, and I would argue the President's Trophy winners by the end of the year, as I said at the start of the year. So if they win it, that is one prediction that I will have nailed and be gladly happy to accept. Little water break. Throat gets a little dry when you talk for this long, and especially straight. No one breaks in between. So Chicago, moving up into the 3rd row. I would argue the cutoff for this row should be probably up here, as I've said previously. But Chicago, again, moving up because other teams around them have gotten worse. A.K.A. Philadelphia, New Jersey. And, those were the only 2 teams because they moved up 3 spots, so they were in, I want to say, 27th last time, because the Islanders were 1 spot above them. And now they move below because Chicago has at least won a few games in between those other games. And moving down 1 spot, we have Winnipeg. This is where I would draw the line, as Winnipeg, they're mediocre. They win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 2, and that's how the season's gone for them. They still have a winning record, I believe, as of currently, but they're not going to be in the playoffs at this rate, and they're much better teams that I'd much rather see in the playoffs. And on paper, I said this last time, on paper, Winnipeg, they have Wheeler, Scheifele, Connor, Ehlers, and Dubois they brought in and got rid of Laine. Laine's finally got to 10 goals in Columbus last night, so if he scores 20, it's honestly a success there at that point. Dubois has been one of the good points in Winnipeg. And, with a goaltender like Hellebuck and him in his, you could argue, prime, then again, I would argue a few years ago was his prime, but he's still a very good goaltender, and he should be, not that to say he should be carrying, but Winnipeg should be winning more games if they even want to challenge for a playoff spot at this point. And moving up 2 spots, Columbus, pretty much staying the exact same range. Tough losses to Florida. It seems like every time I see Columbus play, they're playing Florida, and it's brutal every time they do, or Carolina. And, Korpisalo Merzlikins, every time they play Florida, they know they're going to be swapped at one point, whether it's 9-3, 8-4, as like last night. They get pummeled by Florida especially. It's actually kind of funny to see, but it's just destroying this team's confidence, I think. But they move up 2 spots because they showed they could score against Florida, and that's something not many teams have been able to do. And they scored 4 goals in the loss last night, so good for them, and only losing by 4 to arguably the top team in the league. And the reason they're above Columbus is because, the reason they're above Winnipeg is because I feel like the effort is there for Columbus. Now, moving down 5 spots, we have Vancouver as their 9-0-1 start with Bruce Boudreau. It's kind of just tinkered out. They got to a point where they lost 3 in a row, then they won 3 in a row, then they lost 1, win 1, lost 1. But they're back to it's better than what they were. They were just losing. But now they're in a mediocre stage, and they don't have games in hand either. So it's going to be tough to climb back into the race, especially with Edmonton and Calgary getting better now. Edmonton, they think they won they lost at Ottawa their last game, which also allows Ottawa to move up the board. Another reason. And, Vancouver just struggling they're not necessarily struggling, but good win over Chicago last night. They dominated 55 minutes. If you saw the BFR earlier today, you would have seen that. I complimented Vancouver very much so on the way they played their game, and they should have won by a lot more than 3-1. In 20th, we have Detroit. They have moved up 3 spots. And these three especially have just stayed around here the entire year. Detroit was upper at the start of the year, so was Winnipeg and Columbus. But they've all just drifted into the same stage, whichever team has the better record is probably going to be above them. And Vancouver seems like they're going to fit right in with this group of misfits, I'd say. You got, this is the line right here, which they're definitely out, but above here, you got teams that could make it, most likely won't, but they could. Now, moving up 4 spots, we have, even though they seem to have gotten worse, I'd argue San Jose, but that's again because Philadelphia, New Jersey, teams that have gotten worse. Vancouver was on 16th, I believe, last time I put them, or 17th, so they move up also another spot. So San Jose moves up. What does that say? That says they move up 1 spot. I think I said 4, maybe. It's 1 spot. So you have San Jose pretty stable the way they've been playing. They've lost ground and they fell behind Edmonton in the standings, so now they're in 6th. So they're starting to tinker downward, and while they move downward, Edmonton moved upward as they move down 3 spots, even though they finally won a game. Losing 6 in a row, losing 7 in a row was it, and then they went on lost 3 in a row. They played pretty bad this month to say the least. And it's kind of interesting the way that team is built. It's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and a bunch of others at this point. No one's really else is produced. There's not much to say about a team that just loses a lot, other than what can you fix about them. Fix is that you guys they brought in Hyman, they signed Nugent Hopkins to a big deal. Not to say they've been playing bad, but they got to start with Fogle on defense. They have Nurse, they have Bouchard, who's going to be the next guy there. I have a feeling. Cody Ceci, Duncan Keith, Tyson Barrie, all these guys that have offense in them. Keith's a bit older, but they have offense in them, and they're just not getting it enough to win games. And they lose last night to Ottawa, who's you see at 26th, 3rd worst team in the league in the standings. But actually, I think it's 4th worst now. I'm pretty sure Seattle moved into 30th. So, yeah, Edmonton's got to fix their problem. Now, moving up 1 spot, we have Dallas. Dallas has been improving, I will say. Sagan's been starting to get hot. He had 3 points the other night, I think. I know 2 goals. And if you can get him producing and you get Ben producing along with, you've already got Robertson, Hintz. Klingberg wants a trade, so who knows what that's going to happen. And, yeah, you got these pieces. So if you got your young stars producing and you got your veterans producing, veteran stars, this team, Dallas, could be a very dangerous team. Pavelski, best 37-year-old I think I might have ever seen as a forward. Fleury would probably be the best goalie, unless you count Hasek. Hasek was a very good, even in his older ages, very flexible. But, yeah, Dallas can be a very dangerous team, and Pavelski might be, honestly, one of my favorite forwards to watch. I liked him a lot in San Jose, and I want to see him get a cup, but it's not likely going to happen with Dallas, if it's likely going to happen at all. That's to say the least. Now, moving down 2 spots from last time, we have, if I can get this thing off, Calgary. Calgary's moved down 2 spots, and it's kind of like Edmonton. They're starting to climb back up, but they've kind kind of other teams have either gotten better or have solidified their spots in the top 16, that they get the 16th spot and are barely in it, because I could have put Dallas and Calgary, but I've said, Calgary's been a bit better than Edmonton for a while, and I need just a little separation. Dallas is still on the edge of the playoffs, so I'll put them right outside, so it worked out perfect for me in that way. But yeah, Calgary, just got to keep improving if you want to make it to the big show, that's for sure. Now moving down 13 spots, the Washington Capitals. I don't know what happened to this team. I could go on for several minutes to talk. I might go on for several months to talk about Washington because it's minutes that I have right now. Ovechkin has stopped producing at the way he was at the start of the season. The team has stopped winning. They've been looked like they've been out of it for some games, and it's just been a disaster the last month. And because they were second on the power rankings last month, they moved down to 15th. They were second. So this month they just absolutely tinkered out. There was a period where they lost 5 in a row, they lost 4 in a row, lost 3 in a row, 2 in a row, getting a win sprinkled in here and there. And yeah, I don't know what exactly happened to Washington, but they looked great at the start. They looked like they were going to win. I had them winning the division at the start of the year, and they proved me right. The last month they were second on the power rankings. And it's just a wonder what exactly went wrong and why is it going wrong, and if anything will be done at the deadline to fix the problem. The deadline currently is about a month and 20 days away. I believe it's March 21st. So we're probably going to see a pretty active trade deadline with the amount of contracts expiring this year. And Washington was going to be an interesting one if they give some calls to Chicago about Fleury possibly, as goaltending definitely hasn't been their strong suit. And kind of similar to Seattle in a way, even goaltending has not been their team's strong suit. And what can be done about it, and what will happen about it, is the question at this point. Moving up 3 spots, you have Boston. I really want to move them higher. They've been playing better, definitely much better than they were in the previous power rankings. But once again, teams have solidified their spots, and it's kind of hard to take teams out of spots that have been playing well as well. So Boston only can move up 3. We're in 17th and moved into the top 16 and have solidified their playoff spot. Unless they completely fall off like Washington has, I think they've pretty much got that second wild card. Second wild card solidified. The question is whether they'll be playing Florida, Tampa, or Carolina. I don't think they'd want to play any of those teams. But Boston has playoff experience. So as we get closer toward the playoffs, we'll be looking at playoff teams, which teams I think will go far, which we do predictions once the season ends profoundly. And we'll see how Boston, as a regular in the playoffs, as a team that's usually pretty competitive, if they will go on one last run, as Bergeron's in a contract year. He's older now. Marchand's playing still out of his mind. Pasternak's pretty good, and Pasternak on that second line and gave a bit more scoring to their lineup, which I think has gotten them able to get a few more wins. And they've been playing really well, especially against Washington, but Washington just kind of tinkered out, as previously mentioned. That's why I put Boston above Washington. Now, moving down 2 spots, we have Anaheim, who seems to be slowly but surely falling out of the playoff race. And it's unfortunate. I want to see this team succeed, but I think they I think they're good enough currently to make the playoffs. It's just whether or not they will be able to sustain their spot in the playoffs down the road. With Calgary, Edmonton, even San Jose and Vancouver, they could be creeping up at any point. LA's gotten much better. You realize, having seen LA on the board yet, they've been a decent jump into the top 16. As we'll move on. And moving down 3 spots, you have Pittsburgh. 2 power rankings ago, I believe they were the number 1 team on it. Now they have moved down to 12th. It's where I had them prior to their winning streak. And yeah, I'm pretty sure they've stayed, aside from that 1 month they were at number 1, 9 to 12. They've been pretty much there the entire season. I think it's a good spot for them. They continue to show that they are good enough to compete, even though people think they're going to fall off every year. And it's another team that you wonder, like Jari's having a great bounce back season, and when DeSmith is in, he's looked good. So goaltending is not a problem. It's when it comes to playoff time, if goaltending will be the problem, because Pittsburgh was number one in the division last year with the realigned divisions for the protocol and issues with traveling and stuff. So they were number one last year, and they lost in 6 to the Islanders. But to be honest, I predicted that, because for some reason Islanders always can beat the only team that's Pittsburgh's kryptonite, except for 2013. Now moving up 7 spots, we have the LA Kings. LA, they've gotten Byfield. They brought him up. He scored his first goal, and things have been rolling in LA. They've lost a few games, but they've been playing really well, I think, over the last little bit now. And if they keep playing the way they're playing, then I think they moved into second in the division today. So if they just keep this up, they will make the playoffs and surprise people like me who currently only have, I believe now there's only one team who I've had in the Pacific that's in the playoffs, if I'm correct, because I predicted there'd be 3. I think I said Vegas, Edmonton, and Seattle. Vegas is the only one that's currently I've had in, but you never know. Vancouver could surprise. I had them 4th, but I didn't have them in. I've had 5 in the Central, and currently I think we do have 5 in the Central, but we'll see. Now moving down 5 spots, especially after the way they've been playing recently, Vegas. Eichel will be in the lineup, has been heard to be in. He's been practicing, so once he joins Vegas, we'll see how this team looks. But another team that's just seems to have gotten a bit worse as time's gone on. The last power rankings, they were in 5th, so they moved down to 10th. And that's the head of the Pacific Division. This just shows how quite bad the Pacific Division really is. As there are 4 teams in the Central I still have left to go through. And as well as 1 in the Atlantic. 3 in the Atlantic. I'm trying to remember the Eastern teams. They're a lot harder to remember than the Western teams. So you have 3 in the Atlantic, 2 in the Metropolitan, as well as 4 in the Central. So you still got 9 teams left. And when Vegas is moving down, just kind of just shows how that's not a great division whatsoever. And moving down 1 spot, once again, not because they played bad, but because teams in the Central have gotten much better, and that's Toronto. Nothing new to say about Toronto. They've looked good. Marner's on a 6-game goal streak. Matthews is still tearing it up. And this team, compared to what they were when they started, they've now they were first in the power rankings a few months ago as well. And they've just pushed up into the brink here, and they look ready for the playoffs. This is a team that's waiting for the playoffs and to prove something new. And they might be the only team in the league that can say, we want to play Tampa in the first round because they want to prove something. And what better way to prove it by taking out the Stanley Cup champions in the first round? Do I have them beating Tampa in the first round as of the way Tampa's been playing? No, but anything can happen. It showed in last year's playoffs. It showed in the 2019 playoffs specifically when all first number 1 seeds went down in the first round. And moving up 5 spots to 8th spot, we have the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis, they've gotten much better. They hold the 3rd spot in the Central Division, even though there are 3 spots left. I think one team lower than them has been playing better than them, just by a little slight. But St. Louis has proved me wrong in all the aspects. They have what I thought Chicago was more likely to be this year, and Chicago's kind of going to take their spot. St. Louis, they've gotten older, and they traded away some of their veterans. Torrey Krug has been decent enough. Ryan O'Reilly, truly the veteran presence on that team, the great captain choice. You have Tarasenko, who wants out, but he's been doing pretty well. You have Kyrou, who's the big star of the show. Buchnevich, the pickup from the Rangers, and Saad. I like those 3 in St. Louis. They've performed well. Saad, as a big fan of his, I have his bobblehead, in fact, right in my Blackhawk bobblehead shelf over there. This 2015 one, I got that as a gift after they won the Cup, and he was my favorite player back then because he shared the same name as me, because that was rare. I did not meet people who had the same name as me. So, yeah, that's the St. Louis in a kind of a nutshell. Not really, nothing new. They're just, instead of the way they were losing, now they're winning. I mean, in 7th we have Minnesota. And Minnesota, only reason I have them ahead of St. Louis is because of the way when they play. I feel like they just play with a swagger that they know they're going to win. St. Louis is a pretty big, heavy team, and I feel like there's still some questions about their goaltending, because especially Vinny Husso, he's kind of what Binnington has been in 2019. Binnington, he's getting paid the money, and Husso, he's shown that he can play in the NHL, and he's pretty much taking over their starting spot. And that's kind of the struggle for St. Louis, if anything, at goaltending, is what they're going to do about. It's a good problem to have when you have a young guy coming up and can take over the roles, but that you can also have a sophomore slump, whereas Binnington's had a sophomore and a third-year slump. So we'll see how that works. But Minnesota, they just walk in with a swagger with Kaprizov leading them that they just know. It just looks like they know they're going to win. They demolished Chicago pretty easily a few games back in back-to-back games, so it's kind of easy to see for why I think that. Now, moving up one spot from last time, we have the Nashville Predators, who were 7th last time. So we got 3 Central teams in a row here. You got none in this one. You have Chicago and Winnipeg and Dallas here, and you have Arizona in 28th. So you have 4 Central teams in the top 8. That shows you how a competitive division the Central is. Along with the Metropolitan and the Atlantic this year, Atlantic's kind of a battle for who's going to get first and who's going to get second between Florida and Tampa. Or in the Atlantic, it's going to be who is going to be first, because literally any of the 4, if Washington bounces back, could go for it. But right now it's Rangers, Pittsburgh, Carolina that keep switching off every single night. So Nashville, they just keep rolling. I don't know what this team took. It's like Duchesne, Johansson. Their entire team's drank from the fountain of youth, and they have a lot of young guys. And Duchesne and Johansson look like what they should have been when they signed the deals, and they've been on a roll ever since. They're second in the division, and pretty much the only challenge besides, I think, Minnesota for first in the division. However, I do think Minnesota. I think if you feel like if Nashville played Colorado in a series, I would say Colorado would win. But Minnesota and Nashville, those are 2 very similar teams. And Colorado has more star power, but Minnesota just has that. I think more. They have the more. I don't want to say swagger. They have the more confident approach. Colorado is a machine right now, but Minnesota seems like, I feel like, the only threat to them in the Central Division. So moving up one spot, we have the New York Rangers. Keep doing what they're doing, winning games, taking over the first in the Metropolitan, and nothing else new to say about them. But they've looked quite good, and I've seen questions about Lafreniere getting traded, but I don't think they should. He could just be a late one, especially with the way the pandemic came all of a sudden, the way he was drafted, and basically the way that he was selected via basically a bubble version of the draft lottery. That probably shouldn't have went to the Rangers, but moving on, moving down 3 spots. Last month's Power Rankings number 1, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Again, nothing wrong with Tampa, but Florida has kind of just been leaving them in the dust as of late. They've moved 5 points ahead of Tampa, and Tampa has 1 game in hand. Florida's been a machine, and Tampa's also been a machine. Florida's 8-2 in their last 10. Tampa's 7-2-1 in their last 10. Very similar teams. I assume they're going to meet in the second round of the playoffs. If they don't, I'll be shocked. And if they meet in the conference final, that's even better. If, let's say, the way divisions work, that's the way it happens. I would love to see a Florida-Tampa conference final, and I think the Battle of Florida is finally going to... You had round 1 last year, 2021, which Tampa had... I had Tampa winning in 7, Tampa won in 6. But I'd really want to see a 7-game series between these two, because these teams have truly developed a genuine hatred for each other. So, staying the same spot as they were in the last Power Rankings, we have the Carolina Hurricanes, in which they're the machine of the Atlantic Division, I think. The Rangers have been good, they hold the division lead. You have Pittsburgh, Carolina all just night up in there, but Carolina, I think, it just has the best games, I want to say. when they have a bad game, it's not a bad game for them. They will play really well, and maybe just maybe sometimes it'll be goaltending, or maybe just a bad play. Just one thing will be wrong, and the whole game will fly out of hand. But there have been times where Carolina's been able to come back from those, and they're another strong favorite for the Cup this year, and you can see why just by the way they play. And moving up 2 spots, Florida. As I mentioned previously, 8-2 in their last 10, and yeah, there's been a machine in the East, best team in the East, current leaders of the league by 2 points. The number 1 team, who's moved up 8 spots, Colorado, is only 2 points behind them, and I believe they have a game or 2 in hand on them, or maybe 3. But Florida looks like they've got the lead, and they aren't going to give it up very easily. We got a 1996 matchup of the 2 best teams in the league right now at the front run of the thing. I would love to see Florida go against Colorado in a 1996 rematch, or such as Colorado-Tampa would be a great final, or Nashville-Carolina, Nashville-Florida, Minnesota, New York Rangers. Those are some good finals that I would like to see. And the Colorado and Florida are so similar in the way they can just explode you with goals. Colorado, I think, has got the better defensive structure, while Florida, can score at will against you. Every night they can go out there and score 10. It's incredible. They have 192 goals, I think, currently on the season, they broke a record for most goals scored in a month, I think, this month. And I saw something on Instagram how they scored like 74 goals as like a new record for this month. And they scored 192 goals. The only team that has ever been able to score over 400 goals in a season were Gretzky's Oilers. And Florida's getting pretty close to doing that because they get contributions from everybody. You got Huberdeau, Barkov, Reinhart. Marchment had 6 points that other night. You'd probably be like, who's Marchment, honestly? You have Lundell, Verhaeghe, Duclair. The depth on this team is great. The star power on this team is incredible. Ekblad on the D, Uyghur on the D, Bobrovsky having a bounce-back year, might get some Vezina votes. Spencer Knight not being what he was in the playoffs last year, but still playing relatively well, and Florida can bail him out by scoring just enough goals to win. And while Colorado is number 1, that's because they are 10-0 in their last 10 games, and they've won their last 18 in a row at home and are threatening a record of 23 in a row at home, because this team is just unstoppable right now. And I don't think they eventually will be stopped, which is going to be a question of who takes them down. And will they be able to get out of the second round in the playoffs this year? With Vegas playing the way they're playing, and with other teams playing the way they're playing, I'm going to say no. I think this team is going to go to the conference final at the lowest, at the minimum, and Cup with the maximum, because that's the way this